G'day everybody. Well, today's the day. Let's see if we can't sort out this jumble of wires. Welcome to Basket Case. Now, I'm no auto electrician, but I know enough to be dangerous. I was fortunate enough to get hold of this supplementary service manual for the RH model, which is the loom and the frame that I'm dealing with. And it does contain a wiring diagram. However, my eyes aren't that good. So what I did was I photocopied it bigger. So that allows me to see a little bit more clearly as to what I've got, but of course it's all one colour. And the loom has had the fuse box hacked out of it, and there's open-ended wires, etc. So what I did was I stripped a lot of the harnessing off so that I can see it's a little bit clearer. And what the best tool to use when you're trying to identify what goes where is the old multimeter, and you have it on the continuity so that you can touch one end of a wire and see, where it runs on the other end. Now, I've already identified the feed out to the ignition. There's a red wire that goes to the ignition, and one of the best methods I've found for doing that is if you make a couple of copies of these wiring looms, is use a highlight pen and just work through one at a time. So I know that I've got a red wire going to my ignition, and it comes off the battery. Now the battery is here, and this is the red wire here. So, if I look at that, it shows me that I've got one other junction or a couple of it. This one here is a terminal block that I'm not going to be using. So it comes off the battery, up through a fuse, and then it comes down and runs out to the ignition switch. And it also livens up item 30. And item 30 is the rectifier regulator. So all I need to do is check with the continuity meter that I've got power to those two things. And that's how I like to work through it. So the other one that I need to identify, one of the other major ones, is once you come out of the ignition switch, you've got to go back into your fuse box. And that is a brown wire. So it comes out of the fuse, out of the ignition switch, and it also livens up another part of the regulator rectifier, and also down here to item 29, which happens to be the field coils, so the pulsar coils for the TCI signal. So we go back up here, and that is the feed for the fuse box. Then out of there we have a brown wire, another colour. We have a brown wire, and this guy is the main feed into the loom. So he's got quite a bit hanging off him. Goes to the flasher cancelling unit, goes down to the flasher, comes across here, up to the instrument panel, provides power to the horns. Any other junctions I can see there? Yes, there's one here. Runs all the way down to the front and rear brake switches, and then into the instrument cluster for the warning lights, I suspect. And that looks like it's about it off that brown wire. Would appear so. So then the other power feeds are red and yellow and a red and white. So the brown wire comes off fuse number 13, and that is telling me that it's the signal fuse, so your flashes and your brake lights by the looks of it. So I'll just start working through the loom now and try and identify that they're going to feed into the right areas. Alright, I've tied the yellow and red with yellow stripe, red with white stripe, and brown wire that I believe are the right ones to feed back into the loom, and it appears that they would be if I take that, hook it on that brown wire. This is what's left of the flasher unit, but if we got power there. And that's what you do, you just have to work through. There's a massive junction here. But it's not part of that feed, so that must be the one back. Yeah, that's the one coming out of the ignition switch. So if I touch that on there and touch that on... Yep, so that's the one coming out of the ignition switch. It's this thick wire here, and it's feeding off to... It's easier if you pull it all apart. See, there's a regulator rectifier plug, so that one's right. This guy here and this guy here are a mystery to me. I don't quite know what they are yet. They obviously go somewhere, but and they're live with the ignition, but I'm not sure where they go. This guy here is going down to the pulsar coils, so that one's right. Let's just go back and refer to the picture. So the brown wire coming out of the ignition goes to the regulator rectifier and the pulsar coils. Tick, we've got that. And then it comes up here and it splits off. So maybe it was the configuration of that particular fuse I've selected only has one point. So I can actually get rid of those two wires, and I'll do that. So that's a relief. We know that we only need to feed back to the fuse box and down to the regulator rectifier and to the pulsar coil. So this is what you have to do. You just have to go through and trace out every wire, and then and work on one thing at a time. So work on, in this case, getting power into the loom, into the ignition switch, out of the ignition switch and into the loom, and then work on, say, the red and white wire out of the fuse box, and then the red and yellow wire out of the fuse box, and just trace them through and make sure that they all go to where they should go. So now we have the red wire coming from the battery. I've run it through a grommet here into the back of the fuse, comes out of the fuse, the main fuse, into the wiring harness, and that goes all the way up to the ignition switch. So now then it comes out of the ignition switch with this brown wire, and that feeds back to the fuse box. So now we need to attach the other brown wire that goes into the loom, red and white and the red and yellow. And now if I test this here, pop that there between the positive and there, and I turn on the ignition switch. We have noise. And if you remember correctly, we also should have power straight to our regulator rectifier. That'll be this red wire here. So that's good. Yeah, I now need to, these are the wires from the fuse box. So I need to extend those up and attach them. Get some heat in there. Alright, so once we've soldered them up, we can slide the heat shrink over. Shrink him down. Power from battery through to fuse, from fuse out to ignition switch, back from ignition switch into fuse box, out of fuse box into the flasher circuit, the ignition circuit and the lighting circuit. So the lighting circuit's yellow and red and yellow. The ignition circuit is red and white. So technically, if I was to hook it all up, although we don't want to because we've got loose bits of kit lying around everywhere, you don't want to liven the loom up with bits that could arc out. But I could now connect the earth and liven this system up. But I'll keep plotting, we'll just keep moving through. Now I've had to knock up a 5-way junction for the earths for tail light, left and right indicator and number plate light. Get it right? Try and solder all this together. Hey presto, Brian. I reckon I've now sorted out the back end of the bike. What I've got is a heap of little mini looms going on here. This is the red wire from the battery out to the switch, the brown wire back to feed the fuse box. Out of the fuse box I have another brown wire which goes back into the loom, and a red and white wire and a red and yellow wire. Red and white goes to the ignition circuit and the red and yellow goes to the lighting circuit. And the brown wire also, goes into the flasher unit indicator circuit. So I've traced all them out. They're all connected. I will obviously tidy this up somewhat. So now with the ignition on, we have light. We have a tail light, and if I depress the brake lever at the back, we also have a brake light. This is obviously the TCI unit. Indicators and tail light assembly are there. So if I go and hit the turn signal switch on the handlebar, we now have a flasher as well, and a horn and lights. So I've jury rigged all this at the moment. If I turn on the light switch, we have a headlight and a high beam. Okay, so engine kill switch is working. The pass light works. Everything functions. The only thing I can't test at the moment is the start button. So what I've got to do is configure. I've got the starter relay connected, or solenoid. All I need to do now is sort out this guy, which is the safety relay. But that's take a little bit of thinking, and I need to rig up I've just got a standard 4-pin relay. I might just give you a quick overview of what that's going to require. Basic 4-pin relay. You can pick these up at any parts supplier, automotive parts supplier. Essentially all they are is a switch, and so you've got a box here. Underneath it you've got 4 pins. You've actually got 2 independent circuits. One is an electromagnet and the other one is a contact. It's an open switch, and what happens is you complete a circuit here, creates electromagnetic field, closes those contacts and allows the circuit to pass through, closes the circuit. So we're going to use it for our neutral switch to make sure to cut or supply power to the starter solenoid in the event that it is in neutral or not allowing us to start. So our starter solenoid needs to be in this circuit here. This is our starter here, our starter solenoid, which is also a relay, and it will go to ground through the start button, but it goes to ground. On the other side of this we've got power. This guy here is the switch, so we also need to have power into that guy, so those two need to supply him, and this fella here will go to ground via the neutral switch. That's all very simple, and it will work, but we've got another problem, and that is that we've got another power supply in play. We've got a globe which is mounted in the speedometer, and it tells us that we are in neutral. It's your neutral indicator globe, and he too gets his earth from the neutral switch. We've got positive here. So what the problem that can present is that power can backfeed through this system, and we don't want that because it could close the relay when we don't want it closed. So to prevent that, we need to put a thing called a diode into the system, and this is the symbol for a diode. If you're looking at your wiring circuit and you're wondering what that is, and this is what they look like. So I bought this from a local electronics store. It's a 5-watt bias diode. So the way they operate is that they will always block from the higher voltage side, without going into details around how they work, but essentially they allow electron flow in one direction from the low side to the high side, but not back the other way. So on this side of the diode, we've got power coming from there, and on this side we've had power coming through resistance, so it'll be at a slightly lower ohms reading, so we'll call that the low side negative. So the power can flow through here and through the switch, but this power from the globe, bulbs grow in the ground, cannot flow back through this diode. So that's the short story on what we need to do. I could have gone and bought a diode protected relay, which has actually got the diode built into it, but I didn't actually think of that until I sat there analysing the circuit on the bike. These things are very cheap. You can buy a pack of 50 of them for a few dollars, whereas these are reasonably expensive, particularly the diode protected ones, so better to do that. So we'll just plumb that in line into the sky blue wire, making sure it's facing the right direction. They actually tag them. That's the positive side, that's the negative side, so that's the block that way, and there's also a line, in this case it's a silver line, around the diode right at that end, and that indicates the load resistance side. It won't flow back against that bar. So I need to plumb that in line from the relay like so, and put it into the wiring loom. But before we do that, I'll just give you a little practical demonstration on how these work. Okay, I hope you can see this okay. I've just jury-rigged this. So this is our diode, this is our relay. If I place pin number 86 on the positive, his mate is wired to the diode. If I touch it on the earth, you can hear it clicking, which means that it's working. If I invert that diode and turn it around the other way, nothing. Doesn't work, because it only allows that power to flow in one direction. Right, so I'll go and solder all this up now and fit it to that bit of wiring and see if we can't bump test the starter motor. One safety relay wired up, so we've got power feed from the engine kill switch into those two pins, and we've got power back out again into starter solenoid. And in order to allow that to function, we have our run to earth through the neutral switch. Our diode is in line here. So now, I haven't got the starter motor lead connected, but we should be able to hear a clunk from the starter when I push the start button. Happy days, one working relay. So now I'll just hook up that feed down to the starter and give that a quick bump test. Let's give the starter motor a bump test. We have contact. Awesome. Okay, so now we know that works. Let's try it if we put it into gear. Didn't sound like it went into gear. Turn the back wheel, there we go. So now it's in gear. Nothing. Back into neutral. Happy days. All functioning. Functioning lights, functioning indicators, functioning starter motor. I just have to now look at whether or not I can get spark. I haven't wired up the coils or anything yet, but I'm sure that we'll be able to do something. Fuse blocks mounted up, and underneath the bike, underneath the floor, we also have the TCI unit all ready to go, and there's enough room under there for me to run some wires.